Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jack Threlfall Show. This is episode 35, and for this week's interview, we are joined by a very, very special guest. Returning to the show, F1.com writer Nadim Bart-Williams. Welcome back, mate.
Thanks for having me back. Glad to be back on the show. And apparently you don't get many returning guests, so I feel very special right now.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Welcome back. We've had plenty of racing since our last episode, and plenty of writing from you, of course, on the website too. I think we should jump straight into the Texas Grand Prix that we had last weekend. It was a pretty
Yeah.
epic race all throughout. I mean, it was gripping from the drama with the safety car, the stuff at the end, Vettel's race throughout. Turn one, plenty of controversy to get into there. I think we'll start with Lewis Hamilton, because for me, watching that, it felt like Lewis's race of the season, right? It was the closest he's been to a victory. It was kind of satisfying. I feel like we saw him at full strength and a bit more connected to the car than we'd seen before. Do you think it was his race of the year, and how did you analyse it from your perspective?
I think it was, along with Silverstone, he's probably driver of the season.
Sure.
Because I think with Silverstone, had that safety car not come out for Ocon, he probably would have won the race. So that's another one there. But he was brilliant on Sunday, and especially in the second stint, because in the first stint he couldn't keep up with Verstappen, especially in the medium tire. But then when they went to the hards, he was within like a second and a half, especially after the safety car came out. So he was managing to keep up with a car that's basically been, a rocket recently. So no, he was phenomenal on Sunday, and it's felt for a while that he's beginning to get in sync with the car, and you've seen since the summer break that even though sometimes results haven't gone in his favor, he's been driving out of his skin. And one of the things that I've enjoyed since getting the job, or since working at F1, is riding on board with the drivers, because you get to see like who's, in a way you can almost tell who are the ones who are the top drivers, and you can see in Verstappen, you can see it in Lewis, you can see it in
For
Alonso,
sure.
especially the way they drive, the way they handle that car. So, and going aboard with Lewis on Sunday, you could see that he was at one with that car, and it's a credit to Mercedes as well. They've been steadily improving the car, trying to close the gap to Red Bull and Ferrari all season, and I think Texas was kind of we're getting that type of feeling, and they don't think they'll get a win before the end of the season, but if Lewis keeps driving like that, then it's not out of the realm of possibility.
100%. It must be so satisfying for the people in that team. It's such a huge team. It's one of the giants of Formula One, of course. And that amount of energy and just the hope and the pride, kind of finally seeing their car deliver, because it had been the main complaint all year, is that, we saw with both Red Bull drivers and of course, primarily Max, that just that intuition and that kind of connection with the car is so important to these drivers, especially going into, the technical change that we had this year. And it just hadn't been all together at the right time for Lewis before. And yeah, we're off to Mexico this weekend and Brazil after that. And Brazil was one of his races of the year in 2021. That was a pretty epic drive. So hopefully we can channel that form through into the end of the year. The driver that actually got driver of the day in Texas was Sebastian Vettel, and a lot of eyes were on him throughout that race. Of course, his last ever driver at COTA and one of his last ever drives in Formula One. Do you think that was also up there with one of the drives of the season from any driver?
I don't know if people have noticed, but Seb has been on one in the last few races. Like he's been exceptional in the last few races, and even going back to Japan, spinning off in the first corner, and then finding a way to get, I think it was sixth that he finished, or was something like that, or just pipping Fernando across the line. But he was exceptional on Sunday, and that pit stop. And I know at the end of it, he just said, "Don't make it happen again," and he forgave the team. But you do think, oh, what would have happened had he not got that pit stop? Because I think Russell was struggling, especially because of the damage he had in the front wing, and maybe he probably, just on pace, he probably wouldn't have been able to get Russell. But with the way he was driving, it wasn't out of like the realm of possibility that he could have got him and he could have got fifth place. But and all of a sudden, Aston Martin at the start of the season, I go back to Australia and they just it didn't look great, and now they're at a point where they could catch Alfa Romeo for sixth, and Seb it looks like the Seb of old, and and everyone's asking, why are you retiring again? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
For
But
sure, yeah.
no, he was great on Sunday, and it was kind of nice that we got to see Lewis and Seb fight for like first place again. It was like
Yeah.
what year were we in basically? So no, he's been exceptional recently, and it was for Aston Martin. It could have been so much better had Stroll not crashed out, and they could have possibly just overtaken Alfa Romeo that day as well. So that battle for sixth is very interesting as well, because Alfa Romeo looked like they were in the battle for fourth, and then they haven't scored that many points recently, and now Aston Martin are just on a rise basically. So yeah, but Seb was the master on Sunday.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mention Alfa Romeo because if we go back, it's been a long time since our last interview and an even longer time since we started this
Yeah,
2022 Formula One season. Alfa Romeo at the start of the year they were really in the fight, right? They had that Ferrari engine and always looked strong throughout
yeah,
testing, and the two Ferrari customer teams, Haas and Alfa Romeo, had both made significant jumps up. It looked like in the
yeah,
constructor standings, and it seemed like Valtteri Bottas,
yeah,
was going to be a real key pillar in that upward trajectory for them. But yeah,
yeah,
the combination of reliability and a lack of confidence in the car for Zhou and I guess both drivers in certain races, the results just haven't been as consistent as we would like to see, and very little is consistent in the midfield and the back of the Formula One pack. But it's tough to watch them kind of dwindle out as the season goes on. Um,
yeah,
how do you
yeah.
think?
Especially when you
The sorry,
see
go ahead.
no, just especially when you see how well they started the season, and you think I genuinely thought they were in the battle for fourth, and now it's just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, it's tough because I think for Bottas that would have definitely been in his mind. Like he's one of the drivers who kind of is desired by teams, right? Like he has a significant kind of power in the driver market in the sense that there are
Yeah,
multiple teams that would take him in their car, and his combination of experience and raw speed and how good of a teammate he is as well, which is something that Lewis has been
yeah,
very open about.
yeah,
He seems like the right guy for a developing Formula One team to push
yeah,
both the members of the team, the car, and his teammates forward. But yeah, it is tricky to watch that. You also mentioned Aston Martin. The Stroll collision was really a sort of catalyst for the drama we got at the end of that race, the collision between Alonso and
yeah.
Stroll. Um, in the moment, did you kind of have we don't want to play the blame game too much, but there is some element of most people are viewing that as a Stroll incident, and that Alonso kind of
Yeah.
kept the complaints down a little bit because of his teammate relationship with Stroll next year. Do you think that was a factor in how the kind of media played out after that?
Um, Maybe he
Maybe not.
calmed
Maybe I'm
down, I
just
guess.
conspiracy
And
theory.
no, you could be right that he's like, oh, I'm not gonna insult my teammate for next year. Um, let's not start the relationship off on a bad foot. But um, I think
Son
at
of
the
his
time I
boss
saw
too.
it. It's one of his bosses also. The man that cuts his check next year. But I think at the time when we were discussing it, because it was just the two of us this weekend in the office, we were looking at it and going, that could be a racing incident. And then we went on board with Stroll, and we noticed that he jinked left as well, and we thought that maybe he just was Fernando just didn't see it. He just didn't see him coming, and you saw that Stroll actually moved left. So you kind of have to go, Lance, you should have probably taken better care of you probably raced in a safer way. But then I remembered, I looked back at what Fernando said, where he said that they both went left at the same time. And then I actually listened to what Lewis said, when Lewis said he had Verstappen coming, and he said that because he was shaking so much, he couldn't actually see Verstappen coming. And I wonder if Stroll had the same
Right.
thing, where he couldn't actually see Alonso at the same time coming past him. And so he jinked left thinking, all right, I'm just going to defend the inside line. Or he just didn't, and he didn't know Alonso had already moved left. Maybe he did, and maybe he didn't. So I try and give the benefit of the doubt. I don't think, because that is, if he did do it deliberately, that's incredibly dangerous, and I don't think he did. So I think maybe because we noticed, you saw Fernando's wing mirror shaking as well, that it might
Mm.
have just been in the turbulent air. I think it was Norris ahead of him. Was it Norris? No, it wasn't. It might have been Seb ahead of him. It might have just been that he just couldn't see Fernando, and he jinked left, knowing that he was there basically. So yeah, I'm giving Stroll the benefit of the doubt. It was a bad incident, and it could have ended up so much worse in a way. And just thankful
For
that
sure. Yeah.
Fernando, everyone got away well, and Fernando went on to have a brilliant race. in a way.
Yeah,
But
it was
yeah,
incredible, right?
I give him.
I was just going to say that, yeah, the fact that that car even worked after it hit the ground. I mean, the force that it goes
Yeah,
back down into the ground with has to send
yeah,
so much through the car. And I guess it's a testament to the kind of chassis and the crash structure they have on those cars, the amount of force it can take to go from that height and at that speed, then back into the
mm,
ground and not only work, but beat plenty of other cars who, hadn't experienced that level of accident. And he was
yeah. I
racing
mean,
probably wheel to wheel with them as well. It wasn't like he had a gap to exploit and he got kind of lucky with where the timings
yeah,
was. It was after a repair coming to the back and a safety car restart, and he was still in the fight.
yeah. He had to overtake some really quick cars as well. Like he didn't just like luck out basically, and he had to overtake Magnussen, who was driving really well on Sunday as well. But no, I don't know what Alpine have fed that car, but it's a beast. It doesn't like everyone seems to be hitting it, and they get away with some sort of issue, and they're fine. Um, but no, it was brilliant from both team and driver, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I think today is the hearing as to whether he keeps the position, but I don't know what's gonna happen. But whether or not he keeps the position, or whether or not the Haas's claim is admissible, he was brilliant on Sunday, and again, it just goes back to the thing of riding a bull with the drivers. You get to see who are the top ones, and you can feel it basically just sitting there. And Fernando's definitely still in his prime. He's still one of those guys.
Yeah, he's an incredible talent behind the wheel, and he's pushing for every single opportunity, whether it's practice, whether it's a start of Q1. He's always out there trying to do his best for the team, and he will bring a lot, hopefully, to the Aston Martin seat next year.
Yeah,
Potentially, he is going to be that next step, and then maybe after Fernando, it seems like it might be Felipe Drugovich, right? If Drugovich kind of does well enough in his tests and maybe in some other categories, he's lined up
yeah,
long term for the Aston Martin team, who have been pouring, huge amounts of money, obviously into the kind of non-cost, they're at the cost cap, and then they're pouring huge amount of money
yeah.
into the non-cost cap elements of factory development, that sort of thing. I mean, you go to Silverstone. Anyone that went to Silverstone this year will see the factory that is at the side of the track is on the way in there. It's pretty epic stuff, and it seems like a
I've only
team
seen it.
hopefully heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I've only seen it in like videos and pictures. I didn't go to Silverstone unfortunately, but I probably
Oh,
will
it's
try and
massive, mate.
get down there and see it. But yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I think it's great that Drogovic is getting a chance. I remember talking to, I think you've had her on the show, Hannah Predic, the um
Yes, yeah.
two writer. Yeah, and I just remember asking her once like, is Drogovic gonna get a seat because he's phenomenal in F2? Like, what's gonna happen? And she just didn't know. And so the fact that he's gone to one, he'll be learning from one of the greatest ever in Fernando. Get to just watch him work, and he's going to a team on the rise, so that maybe when he does come in, they're a team that's looking at podiums, and so he comes into a good car. So, and he's going to be a part of that development process as well. So I do hope he does well, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Aston Martin are doing because the development this year has been so good. Like from where they were at the start of the year to where they are now, it's been incredible to see, and if they continue that rise, there's no reason why next year they're not in that battle with McLaren and Alpine.
Whose car will they copy next year? I suppose we'll find out. But see, this is why
I'm
I don't
staying
do
out of
your
that
job.
one.
They wouldn't let me in the press conferences.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've seen that question. I've seen it. According to them, they already had it in the wind tunnel, so I'm going with their story.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a company man. It's funny you mentioned Hannah there because she was. We were talking about Jamie Price before we started recording, but she was also super early on
Yeah,
in the like in the guest when I was just starting the show, right? So she went to Lancaster University before I was there, and I was at
yeah,
the
she
radio
did.
station one day, and a guy told me like, "Oh, you do a show about racing? You should talk to Hannah." So basically, the same way I messaged you, I just looked her up on LinkedIn and was like, please come
Yeah,
on my motorsports podcast. And she was, so open. And that was at a time
mm,
when she was interning at WTF1. So she hadn't got the job at Formula
yeah,
2 yet, but it was kind
yeah.
of, it's been awesome to see, that rise. And I think, yeah, she's a properly cool reporter. I mean, she's been all over. She worked in Formula E as well. And it seems like a really
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah,
an awesome progression.
yeah. I mean, I went on holiday and I knew the guy who obviously had a job before she did, and he left. So I knew someone was coming in, and then I went on holiday and came back, and I just saw this girl sat in this desk, and I went, oh, okay, she's in the F2 writer, and we don't see each other much because I think in F1 people are always on the move. F2 people are always on the move, but when I do see her, she's just great to talk to, and she's so smart about F1, F2, just racing in general. So yeah, it's been great getting to know her over the last few months.
And it's a small world too because it was in my interview with Hannah, and I remember I asked her like who her favorite motorsport creators were, and she said Josh Revel, who's the guy from New Zealand, little cartoon geezer. He
Yeah,
pretty well known F1 YouTuber, and covers all sorts of categories too, which is what I really like about his
yeah.
channel. So then, because she mentioned Josh Revel, I emailed Josh Revel. I had him on the show, and the biggest clip on my whole channel is me talking to Josh Revel about Felipe Drugovich, which is what you talked to Hannah about. So, small world.
Very, very small. I think I've seen that clip actually. I think so. Anyway, I'll check. But yeah, no, it's a
Yeah,
very
just
small
lie to me,
world,
Nadim. You, you
and I
definitely
think
you have seen it, and you loved it.
no,
You
I
really
think I
enjoyed it.
have. No, I have because I end up because since the last time I was here, like every time I see like a clip come up on my YouTube, I'm like, oh, let me see that, let me watch it. So I think I have
Let's
actually
go.
seen it. So
No, that's awesome.
exactly.
I hope he's a real talent for the future. We've also got Logan Sargent coming into the Williams seat next year,
Yeah,
another kind of promising Formula 2 talent. Probably didn't have the cars directly to fight for the title, but I suppose neither did
mhm,
Drugovich. And in a lot of ways, he was bringing an underdog team to that title.
yeah,
But Sargent also looks like someone who could really have an impact on Formula One. I'm not sure. I think he is in that sort of semi-pay drivery type route, which obviously we see through a lot of drivers. But I do think he has kind of family sponsor backing. That's not a knock on him. It's just
yeah,
a descriptive thing about his how he's risen to it. But he has risen through that Williams Driver Academy where they are directly compared against people with the same access as them. So he must have had some genuine kind of talent to be recruited to that level by the team. Um, how do you think that teammate dynamic between Alex Albon and Logan Sargent is going to play out? Alex is kind of getting that role reversal from him stepping
yeah,
into the Red Bull Driver Academy, Red Bull full time seat, very kind of rookie
yeah.
development heavy for him. Now he's going to be the kind of older member of the team, the more experienced one. What do you think the future of the Williams driver relationship looks like? Sorry, that's a really long question, but
No, yeah. I think I think the one thing I've learned this year is that teammates want to beat teammates. So Albon will be looking
mm,
to beat him. But I think that the benefit of going into Williams is the fact that I don't know what their car will be next year, but they're developing and they're building something. So, Sargent will be given essentially time to build with the team. I think same with Albon, and Albon for all the people remember the time at Red Bull, but he's a really good driver, and he's been a really good driver in
oh yeah,
F1. I want someone to learn from and someone to pick up knowledge from. I think going if you're going into if you're going as a junior driver, a young driver, if you're going or rookie driver, if you're going to a seat, there are not many other drivers you want as your teammate other than Alex Albon. So he's been around for a while. He's no longer, I think, would you still tell him as a young driver? I think he's getting to that veteran level now, Albon.
yeah.
So yeah, I think
I guess there's got to be a middle between young and veteran.
yeah,
Like he's of that
young
he's
and
of that I
middle
mean, he's the
aged,
same age as
middle.
Max, isn't he? Right. That's the crazy thing when you
He's
look back, people that we
older.
call young drivers.
Yeah,
Maybe he's older than Max, but I was just going to
yeah.
make the point that Max started so young that he's actually like him and like Norris, and that they're all actually kind of the same
They're all
age.
actually very
I think
similar.
Norris is
Yeah,
Norris is a little bit younger, but it's like he has by the point that he's at in his career and how much time he has left in his career. It's a crazy kind of if you just extrapolate. If he keeps winning it, it could get real crazy out there. But I
it's
was going to jump
insane.
back to the,
Yeah.
the Williams seat. Obviously, the last Williams prodigy that came out of that team is George Russell, who we now see in the
Mhm.
Mercedes race seat, challenging Lewis
Yeah.
and causing headlines at turn one of Austin. What was your view of that incident?
I thought people were very harsh on Russell. I don't know. Maybe it's the fan in me from growing up being a Mercedes fan. But I thought people were very harsh in the sense that, you know, obviously he locked up into the corner, but it seems like he kind of held the car together before he got to the corner. And maybe you could say he should have expected Sainz would try and take the racing line. But I think he said that he thought Sainz was going around the outside. So yeah, I think it was his fault. But I don't think, because I think largely he was to blame, but I don't think it was him being reckless or anything like that. I just think it was turn one. He's trying to get ahead of Lewis basically, and he's
Mm.
just gone down the inside, and Sainz just cuts across basically. And Sainz is ahead, so he does have the right to the racing line. But I think Russell just didn't expect him to be there, and you know, if you're going to blame anyone, mainly because Sainz didn't continue and his race was ended there, you'd have to blame Russell because he continued on. But I think largely, if Sainz had been able to continue, I think I would have gone probably racing incident, especially because it's turn one of the first lap. But if you are going to blame someone, it's definitely Russell because you would say you probably should have known that Sainz was going to try and take the racing line. So, but it's a interesting one, and I've seen a lot of the videos of Russell crashing into people this year, and um, it is pretty funny to watch, but I think people are being a little bit too harsh on him. I think it was just one of those things.
Yeah, there is a massive, like a recency bias in effect where it feels every week in Formula One, some fans think this is the most dramatic thing that's ever happened in the history of Formula One. Some fans think the
Yeah,
refs are the most corrupt they've ever been in the history of Formula One. How can anyone work for this? You know, this is they've given penalties to this guy but not to this guy. And
yeah.
when
I
that
mean,
starts to happen every week, you have to look a little bit critically and think like, that it's probably not true that the most dramatic thing ever is happening
yeah,
every single week. And with Russell, it looks a lot worse if you add together every single incident he's had in
yeah.
his
I
whole
mean,
career. Because obviously it does, because you could do that for any driver.
yeah. I mean, if we're gonna do that, then Max is a two-time world champion, but he's had his own fair share of incidents.
Oh,
Perez has
God,
had his
yeah.
own fair
Toro
share of
Rosso
incidents.
Max was, yeah, he was a maniac.
So like, everything that made Max great and unfortunately when he was coming up is also what people used to go, you can't race with this guy. That's what Seb used to say. And he said, oh, we'll give
Yeah.
him extra room. I remember that press conference between Seb and Lewis. Um, but I think, look, one thing about these guys, they're racing drivers. And racing drivers are looking to find every single inch, every single. If you give them an inch, they're trying to take a mile. And in racing, that type of stuff does happen, especially at turn one. I think did someone else get hit in turn one the other day? I can't remember who, but these type of things happen. No, we had Bottas and Perez on the same lap. There's a
Mm.
few corners down. Are you gonna hold Bottas
Yeah,
accountable for every
Perez had
single time?
contact. Obviously, sorry, I was just thinking when you
Exactly. Yeah.
mentioned lap one, it was the contact with Perez
Yeah.
was obviously a huge
Yeah.
factor for the
So
rest of his race.
exactly. So it's one of those things. I think with F1 fandom the way it is, I don't know whether it happened because of last season or just this is the way it's always been, and just now we have social media. Is everything is so polarized and everything is so dramatic, and actually you can just sit down. An incident is just an incident. Russell got penalized for it, and he took his penalty and he went on. Science unluckily is out of the race, but he'll be back next week, and it's just some things happen. Sometimes things, and it's never no one is trying to take your favorite driver out. Russell did not go into the race thinking, I'm taking Sainz out first lap. If anyone, he probably should have taken a Verstappen first lap because
Oh, yeah.
that was the guy who was going to
Yeah.
win. So, it's just one of those things and you just accept it. Like it's racing. It happens. Like you look at last year with Hamilton and Verstappen, sometimes one may have gone over the line, but it was just racing a lot of the time and it just happens. So I think you just accept it and you just move on.
I think what could get interesting though is if we get what a lot of the talk about Mercedes has been and where we're hoping the direction of their car development goes, in that they have a real world championship contender for both drivers and constructors next year. Everyone's kind of crossing their
Yeah.
fingers for that, just for the good of the sport, to kind of get those big three all fast at the right time.
Yeah.
That teammate dynamic might go back to the Rosberg days, right? Ultimately,
I think
at
so.
the start, if it's well,
Mm.
I'm just thinking like if we look to the start of of Hamilton and Rosberg, they would
Yeah.
celebrate when they were 1 and 2 on the podium. They were like, "Oh, let's go, mate! 1 and 2 on the podium. You're up there with your teammate." And then you slowly start to realize that if it's the same two people up there, either going to be first or second, then you're going to be
Yeah.
in trouble. And I suppose maybe I'm contradicting myself because that wasn't a season where you had all the big three teams up there competing together.
Yeah.
If we get that, maybe they kind of won't have that opportunity to be so near the front,
Mm.
1 and 2 all the
Yeah.
time. But I do think when you're starting to fight for pole every week, you're starting to fight for wins every week, it does turn the heat up a bit, and sometimes that is unavoidable. We know Lewis is one of the coolest characters out there on the radio. Maybe you put Yuki at the other end of that spectrum, but just a stray bullet there for Yuki. I don't know why I said that, but it's true.
Yeah.
I just think that it might not be the happy, friendly thing that the marketing team would want you to believe if they really do start fighting for that. But Mercedes are the best in the world at kind of recruitment and management of teammate dynamic, and it seems like they've got the people in the right place. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting one. I think if I said this to you, I think the last time I came on, and that if Mercedes were just the clear fastest car this year, and it was just a straight battle between Hamilton and Russell, then maybe their relationship wouldn't be as good as it is now, or it appears to be anyway. But I think also the fact that one, Hamilton's a lot older than Russell, so they're very at different stages of their career, and I think Hamilton isn't who he was, I guess, with Rosberg, and I think Rosberg probably didn't help the situation as well in that dynamic there.
Oh no, not at all. No, that's true. Rosberg was loved to get in there and instigate, because he'd come from a teammate dynamic with Michael Schumacher, where that was a huge factor of what happened in the garage. So he was kind of primed to jump into that. So you're right.
And
There
this
is
guy just
there is
came
a
along and
kind of
takes.
context there that's missing.
But
That's missing
yeah,
for this
but
year.
yeah, but I also think next year, if you look at it, we're gonna have 6 of the best drivers. Well, hopefully, anyway, if everyone gets their job done, we'll have 6 of the best
Mm.
drivers in the 3 best teams going at it, and so therefore, it's not only you're trying to be your teammate, you're trying to get the other guy as well. So there's probably going to be an element of, okay, I want to be my teammate, but as a team, we need to get above Perez, we need to get above Russell, and we need to get above Leclerc. Like, what am I going to do, and what are we going to do as a team? So, yeah, there's always your first base of performance is your teammate, and so Hamilton will be looking at Russell, Russell will be looking at Hamilton. But I do think the way the championship is set up to be next year, in the sense that they will not just be fighting each other, they'll have to go against Red Bull and Ferrari. So yeah, I think I know. Yeah, I think as well. Hamilton is much older. He's matured since then. I don't think he'll cause a fuss or anything like that. I don't think he's ever caused a
No.
fuss if rumors or reports are to be believed. So yeah, but I see what you mean, and there is that. But I think if you look at the class science dynamic, they're also pretty evenly matched. I'd say they're closely
Yeah,
matched.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say for teammates,
And race pace,
but and
definitely. I
they
think they are.
yeah, especially in race pace as well. And I think they managed to make it work. They seem to have a good relationship, and I don't see why Hamilton and Russell can't have the same thing as well.
And it seems also like Perez, given the kind of context of where the Constructors' Championship has gone this year,
Yeah,
he should be finishing second in that championship.
yeah,
You're allowed to be that far off Max. He is that good of a driver, but you have the best car on the grid, and to not, or to be in a fight for second as opposed to a clear lead in second is
yeah.
maybe a blemish on what has been a nearly perfect season for Red Bull. I don't want
Yeah.
to. Maybe it's speculation, but do you think that there's a someone who's currently in the F1 driver market who's lined up for that seat whenever Perez makes his exit? Because of course he was down to leave Formula One at the end of 2020. At some
Yeah.
point, maybe it's going to be 24, not 23, but there's got to be someone on the minds of Red Bull as to who's going to be next up in that seat. But we know it's been
That's
super
it.
tough for people to join that seat straight away. So maybe De Vries potentially, he's jumping into the
Yeah,
AlphaTauri. Is there a future there?
yeah, yeah. My sister and I were having this conversation the other day, weirdly, and we were talking about the fact that De Vries was leaving Mercedes to go to AlphaTauri, which is basically Red Bull's team. So he's basically left a rival for a rival, basically. And
For sure.
we were having a conversation like, why would you do that unless, especially because Williams were there, and apparently, the rumors were like Williams wanted him basically. So, um, it could be that maybe he has the eye on taking Red Bull seat when Perez does eventually leave, and we know that him and Max do have a good relationship, and they are very close to Dutch drivers as well. Would be really cool for the brand, especially
Oh
when you go
yeah,
to
yeah, hell of a
Austria.
Grand Prix in the
Exactly as
Netherlands.
well. So, I mean, I don't know this for a fact. No one tells me anything. I don't know any rumors, so I'll put that out there. I just see reports and I go with it. But yeah, I mean that would be interesting. I thought Perez middle of the season. You look back to Baku. I think at that period, you thought to yourself, okay, yeah, he's got it now, and maybe he might not beat Verstappen, but he'll be within the same kind of territory that Bottas was within Hamilton, where he's within a tenth, 2/10, and maybe he just can't. He beats him on the odd time occasion, but there were points this season where he was 6/10, 7/10 off, and you're going, that doesn't make any sense. Why is Verstappen so quick and you're so off the pace? And there was all these rumors about a flaw and maybe the car was pushing towards Verstappen and all that stuff. But Red Bull said that's not true, and I will take them at their word for it. And you do kind of think, if the title fight does get really um, tough next year, and Mercedes and Ferrari do come fighting back, is Perez able to hold his own against those guys? And from what we've seen so far, whenever he's been asked to battle them, he has done it, and he's done it really well. But what could the competition be next season? So it's an interesting debate. I hadn't thought of like Perez leaving. I thought of who would replace him, but I never actually thought, oh, Perez would leave. Um, but it's an
Yeah, it's
interesting
just
one. I think he's
yeah.
gonna.
I was just thinking it's got to happen at some point, right? Because he's
Mm,
on. I mean, we spoke earlier about how the drivers kind of there's this spectrum of new drivers that are just starting, how the different
mm.
ages play out. Not everyone is Fernando Alonso, who's going to drive until he feels like stopping at 50 or whatever. But
I think Max said the
there
other
is
day
this
he
kind of
doesn't plan on driving till he's 40. So
okay.
yeah,
Well, what he's still got plenty of room then to
very a lot of
well,
time.
yeah, and I guess he just stays at Red Bull the whole time because you can't imagine that there's ever going to be a huge shift unless something happens like on the business side with Red Bull that they're ever going to leave that big three union of teams at the top of Formula One. And yeah, we might get people that kind of swap out, leave and join,
Yeah.
but obviously it's very hard to look super far into the future. But there hasn't been a
Yeah.
team since 1997 that's won the drivers' title that wasn't McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to look, and obviously McLaren now have changed in where they are in that sort of ranking. But
But they have a
there's
timeline
got
of
to
where they
be
think they'll be successful.
yeah, and maybe it's Alpine next to join the ranks of top Formula One teams because they're that kind of outside entrance, right? They're a power unit manufacturing team, which is effectively what you need to be. You need to be a together factory team in the modern era of Formula One, and also maybe with those 2026 engine rules, right? That
Yeah.
how the teams attack that is going to play hugely into where we are looking, farther and farther into the future of Formula One.
Yeah.
If we could look a little bit more closely, try and stick with what I've got on my notes here, more closely towards what we're going to see in Mexico this weekend. Is that top speed going to just clear them away a bit like it did in Spa for those Red Bulls? Do you see anything else happening? Maybe we'll get to the end of the straight and there'll be room for the other cars to pick that time back up. But it seems like if they can manage what you get with the altitude and the overheating as well, of course, it's going to be hard to look at the pattern we've had for most of this season, which is going to be a Red Bull, uh, you
Yeah.
know, Red Bull podium, maybe both drivers up there.
Yeah, it's hard to look past it if everything goes swimmingly well for them. You look at it and you go, that is a very long straight. It's not just a straight, it's a very long straight. And
Mm.
we've seen how fast the Red Bull is in a straight line, and I think I don't know if you remember the race on Sunday. There were moments where Leclerc and both Leclerc and Hamilton had DRS on Verstappen, and it wouldn't make a difference. It just they didn't budge basically because they're so quick, down the straight. But if you look at it in the low speed corners and Mercedes especially and Ferrari were very close and were right there with them. And so if they can somehow manage to just keep it somewhat close in that straight, then yeah, maybe we'll have a race. But from what we've seen this year, I mean, you got Spa, Monza, um, even last week in America, it's just hard to look past the Red Bull because I think they were getting something like 3/10 on the straight. Even Suzuka, Mercedes couldn't keep up, basically. So Yeah, I think Verstappen is looking for that record, and he does go well at Mexico. I think he's won 3 times there, so it just wouldn't shock me if he won this weekend, and he's definitely the clear favorite to win again this weekend.
But the heart says Sergio Perez, doesn't it?
The heart would, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love it. I mean, even when he gets like a podium and stuff, it's the biggest thing in the world, and it would be amazing to see Perez win that race. Like that would be, yeah, that would be the story and written, in like one of the most magical stories written. So yeah, I'd love
And
to see Perez
your
do it,
name at the
but he's.
top. It could have,
Hmm? Pardon?
said it could have your
Yeah,
name at the top. That beautiful
I
story.
mean, yeah, I'd try and see my name in there, but no, I think yeah, I mean, it's hard to look past Red Bull and Verstappen, but I think everyone who loves F1, everyone who is associated with F1 would love to see Sergio Perez win in Mexico at some stage. I think it would just be one of the most beautiful sights in F1 history.
Yeah, I mean, we've been all over the world this year with Formula One, and it seems like there hasn't been a country where the passion of the fans isn't mega obvious. I mean, you see,
Yeah.
it feels like everywhere we go, right? The ticket sales people are saying that this is the biggest, obviously by a long way, the biggest numbers we've ever seen. If you look at kind of average attendance, because it used to be there would be quite a disparity between races. Sometimes it's just races in smaller countries like Bahrain and
Mm.
Baku, where it's just obviously there's not going to be as many people there, but there would be
Yeah.
a big gap between what we'd see at Silverstone, Belgium, and even
Monza.
Texas. Has been huge
Yeah.
since 2012 in a way, and just been growing and growing and growing. But everywhere we've been this year with Formula One, we've seen a huge number of fans, and yeah, looking past Mexico to Brazil, that's one of
Cool.
the fan favorite tracks for sure, right?
Yeah.
And that's somewhere where it's going to be pretty epic to bring out that fan passion that we've seen all
That
around the world, but it really shines in Brazil.
yeah. I mean, that's basically Lewis Hamilton's second home race. Yeah, now that I think
Oh,
he's
it's going to
this
be
is
many flags. Yeah, he's going to
yeah.
be walking around. I reckon he shows up Friday, green and yellow and blue
Green
outfit,
and
something like
yellow.
that.
Yeah. That would be I wouldn't put it past him, but no, I think if you look at some of the races, the highlights this year, Silverstone, everyone talks about that. That was incredible. You look at Austria, and Zandvoort was, people tell me how great Zandvoort was, and it's for the fan atmosphere. And then you look at Monza is incredible every single year. The Ferrari fans at Tifosi, they love it, and in Imola as well, under the rain, how much the fans were there. And so, I mean, it's this is my first year working in it, and before that, I've always been a fan. And I always listen to people when they talk about what it was like to go before and now every single weekend is record attendance, record attendance, record attendance. I think to myself, Jesus Christ, like this sport is just incredible. And now you saw Texas the other day, and the pictures of the fans, it was just incredible to see. And I was telling you before about the cameras we get to see, where you see the fans leaving the Grand Prix sometimes, and yeah, I mean, I I I I get support from like my family and stuff, and I think, oh, that's great. I just imagine what it was like to have 400,000 people cheering you on as you went past. I think that would be one of the best feelings in the world. So, um, yeah, I think it's the fanfare and everyone is it's truly what makes the sport so great because they just feel so involved and I know the drivers say they can't hear it, but I just feel like you can actually feel the noise when they go around. I think they just must have to because it's just amazing to watch.
No, it's absolutely incredible, and yeah, it's so interesting that camera because it's so kind of important that when people are looking to F1 for their news stories, they want to feel that the writers, the people kind of writing that news, feel a connection to them as fans, and they're kind of getting represented in the kind of questions that are being asked, the style of the reporting, and the passion that shines through in the
I mean,
journalism.
yeah, I
Is
mean
that
a
a
lot
big
of the
thing that kind of F1 emphasizes?
yeah, I mean a lot of the people I work with are F1 fans, so their passion for the sport comes out, especially when they have to do a feature or something like that, and you can tell in the way they write how much they care about what they're writing, and I think that resonates with fans as well because it's not just oh this is a media guy talking to me. This is like it's an F1 fan who got into F1 who's writing about F1 basically, and I think a lot of fans can kind of feel that, which is I think is it's one of the coolest things that we have about the sport.
Yeah, and it really kind of it's when you see that when you see that people get excited about the same thing, right? Like it even shines through to the drivers. I think one of my favorite clips is it was back at the end of 2020 when they took out the old Renault, the V10 engine, they put it on slick tires and they ran it around Abu Dhabi,
Yeah.
and you can just see that obviously they had a bunch of cameras running, people doing different interviews, and everyone starts to hear that in the background and goes,
Oh,
and they just make that face where you're like, oh, and that kind of moment of sharing that experience, whether you're a Formula One writer, Formula One fan, Formula One driver, that
mm,
connection is what the fans share, and it's exactly the evidence of that we're seeing in the rising attendance numbers.
yeah. I mean, it's that's the best noise in F1. I'm sorry, that
Oh yeah,
engine is so beautiful to hear. Um, it's one of the best noises. Anything like it's amazing. I think it was Alonso driving that day, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, yeah,
Is it? Yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, you go to the crazy thing is that the fans are just as passionate about the sport as I guess maybe the drivers are, and just maybe the media as well. And so I don't think you get that in a lot of sports where a lot of people go there for kind of a day out. Like I think with cricket, you get that a bit. Like when someone goes to test match, it's not maybe they love cricket. It's that this is a day out type of thing, basically. Um, but like with F1, like it's that that is pure fandom. Like that is the height of fandom, and yeah, you can. I see a lot of the Twitter comments. I start to read more now. I don't know why I do. I don't like it, but I do see them, and a lot of people. Some you do have the odd troll here and there, but a lot of people is just genuine passion for the sport and genuine passion for the driver they support. And I guess some people take it too far, but a lot of people are just it's in good faith and they have a pure passion for this incredible sport. And a lot of the times when think you see fans get angry with like a decision or like this whole cost cap thing at the moment, and it's not out of this like it's out of pure love for the sport, which I think everyone can appreciate and everyone can relate to. So I think that that's one of the beauties of the sport, that everyone involved in it is cares so much about it, and even if they don't, they find something that they resonate with, even with like just a driver, which is I think cool in itself. So yeah, it's been amazing to see it this year.
for sure. It's funny because you mentioned cricket there. It just kind of remembered. You're talking about sporting passion. The India Pakistan T20. I mean, you must have seen that, right? The way that ended was absolutely incredible. The tenseness and obviously Kohli standing up in that moment and like being the hero of a obviously huge cricket rivalry. But what a moment that was! I mean, that's a thing that not Formula One fans, but sport fans around the world. It's not something that's restricted to Formula One. A Formula One fan can look at other sports and kind of experience that passion with some empathy there. But we just talk cricket for a second. But as a sporting moment, that's one of the most dramatic I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it was Curly was. I bear in mind this was USA Grand Prix weekend, and I just come home at like 3 a.m. and I think the game was at 6 in the morning, and I just
Yeah,
woke
no,
up and I'm like,
I tuned in the morning. I watched
yeah,
India chase, but I didn't see the
yeah.
Pakistan.
I watched India chase as well. I had to go back and watch Pakistan and them open, but no, it was I think it was the MCG, 80,000
Mm.
people, India versus Pakistan, and the star rose, and it was such a close, tense game, and it just goes with any sport basically. All people want to see is competition and fair competition and tough competition. They want to see the best of the best go at it, and Pakistan and India are two of the best, and you have like the theory of the competition of Baba Azam versus Kohli, and you have Rohit Sharma and Rizwan, and you have Rahul and versus Naseem Shah and all these guys, and it's just great competition, and the fans love it. And the same thing with F1, same thing with football is you know, people just want to see just the best of the best go at it, and watching, and you see the heroes like stand above, and watching Kohli play on Saturday morning. I think that was incredible.
Yeah, no, and it's yeah, the moment where you see someone with all that pressure on their back stand up to the moment. And I mean,
Yeah,
like, it's one of those things where people talk about, if you put a regular person in a Formula One car, it would be the most alien thing in the world. They have nowhere near the
yeah,
neck strength, the reaction speed, the memory to kind of work out all the different buttons. If you put 99.9% of people in the world in the middle of a professional cricket pitch and made them stand in front of a fast bowler, it's like the difficulty of hitting for six when you've got 10 balls to make it. It's just insane. And yeah, seeing someone pull that off in that moment, that's really what it's all about.
yeah. I remember being in school, and during like towards the end of the summer term, we'd get to play, like we'd get to go to the nets basically. And I remember there was this guy who could, I don't know how fast he could bowl, but he felt like 90 miles per hour. And he would bowl it at me, and I just ducked basically. I couldn't see it, I couldn't hit it. And the fact that these guys, even the guys who I guess don't play for the top nations, the fact that they can see this ball going at 80 to 90 miles per hour and they can still hit it. And then you get the bowlers who have the skill of they can reverse the ball, they can swing the ball, they can they can bring out the slower ball. That then you have the spinners who can bring out the deucer, and then they got the flippers and stuff. It's just incredible, and you just see the best of the best just making each other better. And yeah, and yeah, Kohli as well. Just you know, in such a tense situation, a lot of people fold, a lot of people would crack under pressure. And it's a bit with like Verstappen as well and Hamilton at times. In tense situation, they managed to find a way to rise above it. And you look at just this weekend with Verstappen, they messed up at the pit stop, and a lot of drivers, a lot of people would have gone, all right, well, that's my race done. Let's see if I can get second. Of course, he vented in the beginning, but then afterwards, he's like, all right, head down, I'm getting Hamilton. And to reel him in, yeah, okay, he was on a faster compound, faster car, but it's to reel him in the way he did, and then to pull out like 5 seconds on him was just it was incredible.
Yeah,
And so yeah, just to watch the best just work. I think that's why people love sports stars, because they're doing something that the normal, I guess, the average human being just couldn't do. We couldn't fathom the idea of doing. So, and I've just gone on a long-winded tangent about that, but yeah, it's
I
just
know, that's
yeah,
perfect.
I just love sports and just love watching these guys just do what they do.
And if we're gonna, I'm gonna keep carry on this long tangent.
Mm.
Reflecting on the things we see in other sports, and kind of international sporting passion. India and cricket is a huge one. One that also stands out to me as, if you look statistically, I think they're the best sports team in the history of sport, which is the New Zealand All Blacks.
Yeah,
The way that country connects with the sport of rugby, and of course the
yeah,
contribution to it, a nameless list of 100 players who would make any other international team in the world. If you look at people that have played for the All Blacks in the last 20 years, I mean, and the consistency in that it's a team that does rotate players through and brings young players through, especially at the
yeah,
moment. And it's a team that's seeing kind of success continue and continue and continue. That is, for me, and I know you're a rugby fan too, another
yeah.
example of just pure sporting brilliance, and something that can inspire no matter what field you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I used to look at one of my favorite players who plays for New Zealand is Damien McKenzie, and the fact that he doesn't play for New Zealand regularly, and like if he was English, if he was Welsh, if he was Irish, he probably gets in the starting 11 every single game, and he doesn't even like he sometimes doesn't even make the squad. I think he just came back from playing in Japan, and I think obviously New Zealand had a bit of a weird year this year. They lost the series to Ireland, and and they lost. I think they won the rugby championship, but they didn't look good for the first part of it.
No,
But
no, no,
the way
it
the
was
fans,
brutal. The
yeah,
coverage was you can't imagine being part of the New Zealand team. You lose two games, they're like, right, who's got to go? It's a completely
exactly.
different context.
I mean, the coach was on the hot seat basically for losing the series to Ireland. It's like because their mindset is we don't lose, like we win everything, and we
Ever,
win every single game.
yeah,
We win every World Cup, and I guess you could say the fans are spoiled in that maybe just the other teams were caught up a bit, and maybe Ireland are actually good, but they don't accept that,
yeah.
and their passion for rugby, and that because you look at it, it's not a big country. I don't know the size of New Zealand, but it's not a huge country. Yet still, every single time they produce, every single year, it seems like they're producing another world class player. Like look at their fly house. You have Bowden Barrett, and you have Richie Moanga. Like,
You got all
there's two
three
world.
Barretts in the team at the moment, haven't you?
I won't think about it. It's like a family who's produced three exceptional rugby players, and one of them is
Yeah.
rugby player of the year. Like, so um, that passion for sport and then that passion for a team, they love their team. They love it. You look at Australia with their cricket team, how much they cherish the idea of the baggy green. I think you even go
Mm.
to Argentina. I think is it River Plate. I'm not sure, but their passion for football as well, and yeah, I think it's America, their passion for the NFL. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. NFL's popping off at the moment. It's a crazy bit.
Exactly.
We can keep going on the other sport tangents if you like, but geez.
If you're sure, I'm not. I could do this all day, but it's no, it's no. I there's a reason why people just love to see. I keep saying it, but we just love to see the best just be the best because we can't imagine ourselves doing it. I think it's also why people get annoyed at like athletes who don't live up to their potential for whatever reason because it's like, oh, you were just blessed with this amazing gift and it just hasn't worked out, and we feel a little bit sad about that. But no, I like the All Blacks are then they're another example of just how much they mean to an entire nation.
Yeah, and it's a great example of when you can unite everyone towards an aim, like sports teams around the world are trying to do. That element of inspiration and a kind of united team of people is unbeatable. Like if you get the right people in the right place, there's luck involved in everything. But with the All Blacks, you look at the time span they've been able to do it over. They take luck out of the equation by doing it over
Yeah.
such a huge number of years. It's the best evidence of the best team in the world.
I mean, actually, if you look at the based on bringing people together, if you look at the England women's team this summer and what they did, like,
Mm,
and I can't remember
for
what
sure.
Grand Prix it was. I think was it Austria. I can't remember what Grand Prix it was, but after the race was done in the office, they switched all the channels to BBC One to watch the game. And when Chloe Kelly scored, like just you can hear the noise around the building. Like everyone was like, "Oh my god, England scored!" And what that team did for the entire country to bring everyone together, bring everyone just to, in front of a TV screen for 120 minutes to watch these women, the best of the best, play against a really good German team as well. That
Mm,
really inspired a nation, and I took my sister the other day. My sister's not a big football fan, but I took her to an Arsenal women's game the other day, and I was like, "Oh, that's Beth Mead, that's Leah Williamson, that's Vivian Miedemar," and now the Arsenal women's team is playing in front of like 40,000 people at the Emirates. Maybe in like a year or two's time, because of what the England women's team did, they're playing in front of a packed house and a continuous packed house, at the Emirates. So it's stuff like that that's just great to see in sports, and it's one of the best things I think that we as a society we get to experience.
no, it's a really great example of how something that is has its own huge history behind it, but can shift in one summer, one tournament to
Yeah,
a hugely important thing to a huge number of people. I mean, I can say my job is not as interesting as yours at the moment, Nadim, but my part-time job is a little cafe at a train station. And
yeah,
I was working on the day, so we're just a little kind of town just northwest of London. I was working at the station, and our line goes straight into Wembley, and I was working on the day of the final. And yeah, just the like pride people had in showing up for the England team, and the number of families as well, and the number of young kids that were going to that football game with players' names on their shirts, and actually kind of
yeah,
getting involved in learning so much about the sport in such a short space of time that it sets you up to be a long term fan and a long
yeah.
term supporter of something that definitely needed support going into the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you even look at there's so many examples as well. You look at the 100 for the women and what that did. You see all these young kids out there with like Heather Knight shirts or like Sophia Dunkley t-shirts and stuff like that. Like it's just really it just something just one thing can just set off an entire you know, just set off an just roll emotion basically, or just start a motion of support and start a love affair with a team. Like the England women are playing at Wembley now, and they've played USA. They're gonna play Brazil next. I think in next year or something like that. So yeah, it's just yeah, it's one. I just keep saying it. Because I got we've spoken like quite a bit. I just love sports, and that's one of the things I just love to see, and just like the growth of it, and how everyone from different backgrounds just come to support this one cause. You know, and I even look at someone like Lewis Hamilton, and you look at his fandom, and you know, and his fandom stretches around the world. Like it's people who don't know each other messaging each other. Some people don't live in Brazil, live in, in some people in India, and that they're messaging each other because, oh, you're a fan of Lewis Hamilton. Oh yeah, I'm a fan of Lewis Hamilton. Let's be friends basically, and like, it's just a really cool thing. And now he's got to the point where they're trying to get him like he's being called a citizen of in Brazil, like something like that. Like yeah, it's funny in a way, but it's also like really cool that you can touch the lives of an entire nation, and they can go, we want to make you an honorary citizen in this country. And I think that's what sports does, and when sports shows off the human side as well, I think it's just a really incredible thing to watch.
Yeah, because it's the game of the sport and all the drama that generates, but everything that goes along with it, and the amount of eyes that
Yeah.
it draws, and exactly the amount of hearts it can touch through
Mm.
the games, and the huge number of different games.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget at times as well when you're kind of caught up in whatever week to week controversy we find ourselves in at this point in Formula One. I'm sure there'll be people that maybe look back on this
Yeah.
podcast next year and it'll be X team has done Y and this other
Yeah.
team's protested it,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens in that scenario.
Yeah. I think with F1, there's always going to be some sort of drama because
Yeah,
I
they
look
need
at
to use it to win up to a certain extent.
yeah. I mean, but you also look at it like I don't blame the teams for like I don't want to talk about cost cap stuff, but like I don't blame the teams for wanting if someone has breached it for wanting like a punishment. I also don't blame Red Bull for saying we haven't done anything because at the end of the day, if you look at it, at the start of the season, each team was given like the technical regulations and said build a car, and they all did it. And when they came basically to testing, everyone was within like a second, I'm guessing. And so the margins are very very small. And so there's always going to be the teams trying to get an extra tenth here or two, or an extra second head there, or like just whatever, basically, because it's very tight. It could be the difference between you being 18th one day and you being ninth. If you look at AlphaTauri this season, there's some days Pierre Gasly's out in Q1, next day he's like fighting for seventh, eighth place. The margins are so tight, especially in the midfield, that everyone's scrapping and battling for the last inch or the last millimeter, whatever it is. And yeah, so I don't blame there for being a lot of drama because everyone's fighting their own corner. And I think sometimes it goes overboard, but it's just because they care and they want to win. And I don't blame anyone for wanting to win. Like it's just you have 10 teams full of competitive people wanting to win. That's fair enough.
Yeah, and the stakes of the numbers in Formula One
Yeah,
is always one of those things you can reflect back on, and you just think not only is it a huge team of businesses and sponsors that are providing the kind of capital to put the teams together, but just the human effort of one Formula One team, let alone 10 Formula One teams,
yeah,
is a huge number of people who are dedicating their whole lives to being allowing the team to be the best it can be.
yeah.
When you have
I
that
mean, that's
responsibility as a leader, in
yeah,
some ways, I could feel you would be more willing to push the boundaries, kind of given the context.
yeah, yeah. I guess you could say that. I think my sister gave me the
As
example
a
of
limit, of course, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, has a limit, but you do try things to try and whatever you can do to get an edge basically. My sister gave me the she was talking the other day about the fact Williams have 3 points or is this 4 points? Six points in the championship now. And at the bottom of it, but yet still they built this rocket. That part it's the slowest rocket on the field, basically. But yet still it is a
yeah, it's
rocket, and
harsh.
the average human being could not dream of doing what the Williams engineers did, or for what Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi are doing. So it's such a weird sport in that sense, in that yeah, they've built an incredibly fast machine, but in a situation of fast machines, it's not the fastest one. So
Okay, we're back. Apologies for the edit there, but we had a little network error. Should be back up and running now. We were talking about Williams and basically how good of a team it's possible to be in Formula One and still have this gap to the front, and how teams kind of can ebb and flow between these different development stages. We talked a little bit about Logan Sargent earlier and what he's going to bring to that team. Um, is that the right direction, right? To be investing in this young talent? It seems like the teams we've watched develop, Mercedes being a good example, going from midfield to the top. Um, Getting the right talent at the right time is
yeah.
essential to that progression.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, you have an experienced driver there in Albon, so he'll be able to lead the team and guide Logan Sargent. And also, it doesn't. I think it's really good that they're going with a driver in their academy as well. I think it sends the right message and saying, look, if you're good enough, you'll get an opportunity and we'll bring you in. And I think that that's a great thing for them to say. But as well, I think Logan Sargent, as we've seen in F2, he's really good, and he's got a lot of talent, and he's got a lot of you know, it's got a lot of pace. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think it's a really really fun dynamic, and obviously he has to get the super license stuff sorted out, and hopefully he does in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, I think just going forward, it's I'd say a young team on the rise, and they're trying to build something. So why not build it with a young driver?
Yeah, and speaking of well, team dynamics in Formula One, the headlines this week, besides of course the two Grand Prix that we're sitting either side of, been dominated by this Audi entrance and how they've found a way to bring their business into Formula One and pour some investment into a team like Sauber that was probably the best option for them, right? When you're
Yeah,
looking to a team who's possible to bring up a team that is open to new sponsors,
yeah.
that's going to be a huge element, right, as to what we see in the future of Formula One. That Audi Sauber, I suppose, as it will be called.
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen, I think I've seen all the rumors. You see all the rumors about Porsche and obviously Audi was one, and yeah, I think that dynamic for 2026 is going to be really interesting to see. I mean, as I said, no one tells me anything, so I had no clue. I literally just came. I think it was Thursday morning, and I just saw the announcement, and I was like, okay, Audi and Sauber it is. Of course, you see the rumors all the time, but yeah, I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to watch play out and to see how they kind of go along with the field and what their first impact in the field will be, and also who their drivers are going to be. That's also something to watch because Saab obviously have their own junior driver program with Teo Bourgeois, who did the FP1 in Austin, and there's rumors about Audi wanting Mick or Seb or Sainz or something like that. So yeah, I think that's it's always welcome. I love having these amazing brands in the sport. I think it can only make the sport better. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully 2026 is about 4 years away. I don't know if I'll still be at F1 then. Hopefully we'll see. But yeah, I'd look forward to writing about them.
Yeah, and it could be a path for a German Grand Prix to get back on the calendar. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe that's overly optimistic, but Hockenheim, while it was on the Formula One calendar, was a track that a lot of people look forward to, and it was a track that seemed to generate exciting overtaking, exciting racing, and sometimes it was obviously because of the rain that we'd get there, but you're due that in certain parts of Germany, but it would be the right move for Audi, right? They could be kind of campaigning for. I mean, I guess the problem with the calendar is that you can't keep adding races. You have to swap them out, and then what do you swap them out for? It's really tough. But I personally would love a German Grand Prix, but back on the calendar.
yeah. I mean, there's so many tracks that are not in F1 anymore that I often think back and I go, oh, that was such a great track. One of my favorites was Valencia, the one they used to host the European Grand Prix there. That was one of my favorite circuits ever. When I used to play the F1 game, it'd be the first circuit I go to. Um,
Really?
so but I think there's such a demand now, and like, everyone wants every country or everyone that has a track wants a Grand Prix in a way. Like there's always talk about Kyalami, and someone who I'm Sierra Leonean, I'm African, and I'd love a Grand Prix in South Africa. It'd be amazing for the continent for people who look like me in a way, and to get that would be cool. But obviously it's not on the calendar next year. I don't know what's going to happen in the future with that. And Nürburgring as well is another track that people love. We went there in that COVID year, I think. And that was a great Grand Prix, and that was a great track. And Hockenheim, I think everyone remembers, was it 2018 or 2019, Seb crashing out. Um,
18, that was, yeah.
you know, 2018 and 2019 was the one where Mercedes came with that livery and stunk up everything.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Tough
yeah, so
memories for some, but
tough memories for them. Yeah, so yeah, but I think yeah, I mean I don't know what the plans are. Again, no one tells me anything. So I can't give people like information or anything. So, but no, I think yeah, it's definitely a track that I do miss. But there are a few tracks that I do miss on seeing on circuit, and yeah, Hockenheim is definitely one of them.
Okay, so you mentioned that no one tells you anything.
Yeah.
I just wondered, do you get sent a list of like different celebrities who you're allowed to talk to on the grid? What's the kind of the truth behind that story?
Um. uh. What I will say is I haven't been to any race this year. I've been to testing. So, and I haven't been any near any celebrities, and or guests of the teams or anything like that. So all I see is what they show me on TV and I see on the screens. Um, according to Will Buxton, that's who you're talking about. There's a
I
list.
don't know. This is just a question that
I
came up
mean,
in the
yeah,
research.
there's a list. But I did not. I was unaware of such list. But he says there's a list, and that's what I'll say. But yeah, that was funny.
I had to find a way to sneak the question in there.
Yeah,
That'll
that was a
definitely
great
be going
question.
on the TikTok clips.
Yeah, you saying I don't have TikTok. We need to send me that. But yeah, I don't know anything about that. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it like that.
Fair play, fair
That
play.
was funny.
I think that there is an actual conversation to be had about the role of journalists in Formula One. Beyond that, but the
Mm,
spark to that discussion and whatever you would call it
mm,
um, was a real question about what the role of promoters are in Formula One and kind of how that plays into the fan TV broadcast for a
yeah,
normal a normal viewer. Is it like, I don't know, I guess you mentioned earlier there's that kind of fan view camera angle. I think it was in Miami this year. I was watching the Ted's Notebook show where he like walks around the back of the paddocks, and you kind of get this cool insight into what the environment is like on the other side of the pit wall, with the kind of teams and the member guests all just sort of walking around. And it did just feel a little bit like it's this thing where if you know someone who knows someone, they can get you a pass, and then you can get in. And
mm,
there's a weird like exclusivity to it,
yeah,
that maybe isn't something that a fan watching who will never have access to be able to pay whatever how many
mm,
thousands it is, or to have the fame that they're going to get that level of access.
yeah.
I don't know. Is there a balancing act to that, or is it just something that we're going to have to get used to as Formula One grows and grows, and ultimately, it's allowed for a celebrity to be a fan, but I guess people kind of have
Yeah.
this expectation of how they should act.
Yeah, I mean, we can't, in a way, gatekeep this. We want the sport to grow, but we also can't gatekeep the sport and say, what an actual fan is. Someone might not be as devoted a fan as others, but that doesn't mean they're not a fan in some way, shape, or form. And we've loved Monaco over the years because Monaco, you get all the celebrity sightings. It's like the who's who of this
It's
the
a good
entire
point. Yeah,
world.
Monaco. That's what Monaco is about, and that's
That's what
the
Monaco is
oldest
about. Yeah.
race.
And everyone loves it. And everyone loves the yachts.
Yeah,
Whose yacht is that? Like whose yacht is parked next to whose yacht? And there's like the film festival that happens I think the week before Monaco, and so all the celebrities are in town and everything like that. So I think that it's so people do love that. I think it's obviously certain races where because the sport's growing now and now more and more celebrities and well known and I guess influencers and public people are coming to the sport and maybe some aren't as big a fan, but maybe they're learning the sport and stuff like that. And I guess they get an access that some of people the average fan couldn't get, and which is where I get people's frustrations in a way. But yeah, I mean it's a tough one to have an opinion on because I like I'm one of those people who if I see a celebrity I get a bit excited and like when I see the cameras and the pictures I'm like oh he's here and some people just don't care, which is fair enough. I guess where you stand on the whole, celebrity type of thing. But
yeah.
yeah, I
There
think
is a really cool moment if you see someone like maybe it's like a musician or something, and you're like, oh, I had no
yeah,
idea that they liked Formula One, and then if it's kind of right place, right time for some people, it can be
Yeah.
really, really cool. And then I guess you have to accept that like some people are fans of people that you haven't heard of. So, you're not the center of the world. There's going to be people that you don't know that are there, but those
Yeah.
people are probably positive forces to their audiences more often than not.
Yeah, and the smaller the sport grows, this is going to happen in a way, and everyone keeps talking about F1 growing. Like this is part of it, and I love seeing Serena Williams there at F1. Like she's my favorite diva of all
Well, I
time.
mean, the interview was a bit weird, but I'm glad she was
Oh
there.
yeah,
But
I mean, yeah, I'm just glad she was there. I mean, the interview was her and Venus are not the most forthcoming with Martin Brundle. But
no, and it was nothing
when,
to do with them. Actually, it was
yeah.
whoever the producer was that thought that should be the right thing to do. It's just like, really, bit of a swing and a miss. But no, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I was just came to
No, it's
mind.
true. It's true. I think because we had this conversation about the whole going up to celebrities and asking them questions and stuff like that, and it, it's such a weird one because I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I think like two things can coexist. I think celebrities have a right to say I don't feel like speaking, but I think journalists also have the right to ask a question because it's their job and you at the workplace basically. So if you're at the workplace, they have a right to ask you a question, and they also have a right to go, I don't feel like talking. So it's like two things can be right in a way, and I think we can't live in a world where I'm right and you're wrong. Like I think that the two things can in a way coexist, and we do see the celebrities who genuinely want to talk and who have a conversation with Martin Brundle and whoever's on the grid, which I think is pretty cool. And yeah, it's just a it's something I
No,
think
it's,
we're going
it's
to have to get used to.
for sure. There's something I think Martin Brundle says it relatively often on the commentary, but he kind of says, if you're new to Formula One, welcome. We were all new once. And, they'll start kind of explaining more basic things that returning fans watching the broadcast still think like, yeah, I know what DRS is. Why are you telling me what DRS is? But there's such an important element where we've been talking, we spoke earlier about the growth of Formula One. An essential element is that openness to new fans. And if
Yeah,
there's a celebrity who maybe just posts on their Instagram to someone who's never even bothered with watching Formula One, has no
yes,
active connection to it, sees X person who's there, is going to potentially draw a new fan in, and it's an opportunity for that kind of sporting passion that we mentioned earlier to be generated, right? And ultimately it's far a net positive.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just anyway. It's because I think it's just great to see all these people coming to the sport and the sport is growing in a sense. And if the sport grows, I think in a way we all kind of win in a sense. And of course, yeah, Martin Brundle I think does it perfectly. And as well, I think what you need to remember is they kind of see the viewing figures as well. They will kind of see that the numbers for each race is going up and going up. That means we're getting more and more fans. So Martin, of course, will have to go. All right, look, there's more fans, more people watching. I remember, like, I don't remember JJ Watt last year in Abu Dhabi, and he the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the title between Max and Lewis, and he's there tweeting about this, like an NFL superstar, he's tweeting about this, and so obviously, yeah, I think it's we can't gatekeep the sport if we want the sport to grow. Like we have to be willing to with open arms kind of accept that there are new fans coming in. These fans wouldn't have known about who they wouldn't know who Alan Prost or Ayrton Senna is. They wouldn't know that far back. All they'll probably know is Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen and Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, which is fine. And then if they're willing to take the time to learn about the history of the sport, fine. If they're not, fine. That's okay too. They're looking at the future of the sport. That's cool. And there's different types of fans, and you do have the celebrity ones. I mean, F1 has always been a glamorous place. It's always been
Mm,
a place where I mean, if the movies are correct and all the books I read are correct, you do get the celebrities there, and you do have the
100%,
some
yeah.
of the stories I've heard. So yeah, I mean, it's I think now because of social media as well, it's also social media is a big thing as well. So yeah, I think I kind of like it a little bit. I think it's
Yeah,
I understand the
yeah,
difference with
it's a sign for the future. Sports moving in the right direction, and there's an element also of there's kind of an appetite for some sort of general criticism. People kind of like the idea that they get to have their thing to say about what they would correct if they were running the show. And it's in the same sense where, you know, you are allowed to have your own opinions. You're kind of, you don't need to, you know, always embrace that negative side when there's so much positive. And I think there's a psychological factor at play there too, where people are more susceptible to kind of jump to those, oh, well, this is this is problem X, problem, you know, this one, all the things that they think could be improved. And the reality is no one's working against that to try and keep down the sport that we all love.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, we all, like, mistakes happen. Like, things can always be improved. You know, that's the fact. You know, and everyone has their opinion on how to improve certain things, and that happens also. One of the things, you know, I'd love to improve or see change. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, someone might strike me down, but I'd love to see, if we know there's going to be rain, can we start the race earlier? Or, like, if there's going to be heavy rain, can we start earlier to get ahead of the heavy rain? Or, like Singapore, for example, when before the rain hit, could we go an extra 2 hours? Like, maybe there's a reason it can't happen. Maybe there's a broadcast and stuff like that. But, you know, and that's fair enough. And that's my opinion. But I don't think I don't think it's like the worst thing to have an opinion about it. But there's also, if you look at this season, it's been a great season. Every race has had its own storylines. Every race had, you know, its own sort of kerfuffle. You look at Bahrain, it was Leclerc and Verstappen. That battle was incredible. You know, you go to Saudi Arabia, Perez gets pole, but then Leclerc and Verstappen are battling again for the win. Then you go to, was it Australia after that? You know, and there was a moment where, could Fernando Alonso get pole? Verstappen crashes out. Sorry, not crash out, but retires. Leclerc wins again. Oh my God, are Ferrari going to win the championship? All that type of stuff. And then the season, even though Verstappen's dominated, there's been so much good racing as well this year, especially in the midfield. So it's been so much positives going on, but it seems like we're so focused on what isn't working. No, there's a lot of stuff that is working, and it is really cool, and most of it's on track, and we don't seem to be paying it kind of the attention it needs and it deserves in a way.
All right, I did have. Maybe I'm going to be hypocritical here, as complaining about how everyone thinks that they have one thing that they should change to make everything better. But I did have one, which one of the things to me, we talked about Monaco earlier. It's the sort of anticlimactic qualifying that you can get at Monaco that we had this year, where you see, people don't get to complete their final runs because of a crash ahead. It used to be, I don't know, it was at least 20 or so years ago, but they would do one-shot qualifying. So out lap, hot lap, in lap, and you take the time of the hot lap. They would run one-shot qualifying at every track for some seasons. And I feel like what you could do, I thought we could make it like an upgraded version of that, where, you know, I'm sure you've obviously got Stefano Domenicali's email, Nadim, just hook him onto this. But we can basically, you do, so you do the order of when people do the runs is based off of FP3, because that will be important with track evolution. So there'll be kind of, you know, people will want to go last. So suddenly you make FP3 exciting. Then you do reverse. So then whoever's bottom goes first for their one-shot qualifying. You go out lap, hot lap. Then at the end of the first lap, you go into the pits, do a pit stop, fresh tyres on the second set. You do another lap. Then you go across the line. You take that time, and then everyone does that, and that's the time you use, because it brings the pit stop team in for a high-pressure pit stop, which is always exciting. So it's another opportunity for something like a mistake to be made. You get 2 laps, so it's like, you know, there's again more opportunities for mistakes to be made. Monaco is a relatively short circuit, so 2 laps is like not that different to 1 lap at Singapore or 1 lap at Belgium. And I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm just trying to engineer exciting moments, but that's the chance. Then you get to see every pit stop team work on Saturday. You get FP3s more exciting, and you get to see guaranteed 20 full strength qualifying laps. I don't know. That's my theory.
That's a great idea, and because I've seen the report and the rumors. No one told me anything. I just need to get this out there because of the name.
You say that too much. I feel like you know everything.
I don't know anything, but I just need to say this. just in case someone's watching and they're saying, "Oh, an F1 employee saying that this is what's going to happen." But I've seen the reports and I've seen the kind of articles that say that they want to make FP2 and FP3 kind of matter in a way. And I think that'd be a great way where your times in FP2 kind of they count for something. Like FP3 they count for something. And maybe you could actually do an FP2 because FP2 is more of a reflection of what's going to happen in qualifying.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a better time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So FP3 is almost like, okay, let's get ready for qualifying. But FP2 is like, this is what qualifying is going to be like. So those simulation runs you do like halfway through FP2, no, they actually matter for something now, and you need to get your car ready in the right window. And that puts that puts so much pressure on even in the simulators early in the week, like getting the car ready, like having the car in the right window from like basically minute one. So yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. Like,
we'll see. I don't know. How do we get this in the hands of the people that need to see it?
I mean, who do I need to speak to? When I'm in the office, I think next week. So I'll find who I need
Jonathan Wheatley doesn't reply to my texts anymore. So
what happened?
No, that's not true. I just said that to you. I don't have the balls to text him because I'm scared that he won't reply.
Fair enough.
I'm too much of a fan.
Yeah, fair enough.
Although he hasn't got a lot of fans at the moment, to be fair to him.
Yeah. I'm sure he has a lot, to be honest. The haters.
Right, what else have I got? I'll tell you who has got fans is Hannah Schmitz from the Red Bull pit stop team. I feel like obviously she's been working for them for a while, but this year it's like whenever they're doing something right, you get a little shot of Hannah smiling on the pit wall, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Hannah's the best." I'm sure she's got an offer from Ferrari waiting.
They probably should.
Again, that wasn't really a question there. It's just an observation.
No, but I wrote an article about her, after the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's one of my favorite things that I've done at F1 because, I actually didn't know who she was until that Hungarian Grand Prix. I didn't know who the strategy team were. I've had to learn all of that stuff this year and go, oh, that's what they do. So I've learned so much about her this year, and I mean, obviously it's made easier by the fact that her car is incredible, but she's done an amazing job. And like the Hungarian Grand Prix, and she came out and said, "Oh yeah, we weren't gonna start the race on the on a soft tire. We weren't gonna do it we were gonna go hards." And then drivers came in, and then we made a decision, and we switched it. Then I called to get Verstappen in at a certain time, and I think she's incredible at her job. And as much as we love the drivers and the athletes for what they do, I think you also have to give a bit of cap to the people behind the scenes, and she's one of those people. And yeah, I think I'd probably go to races next year, hopefully. And if I do, I think she's one of the people I'd love to meet and speak to at some point, because I think she's done a phenomenal job, and yeah, I think she's been there by 11 years, and she just made her way up, and now she's the lead strategist for Red Bull Racing for the 5-time Constructors team, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a massively inspirational journey. And I also think it's a great example of teams like the strategy team of, Formula One split into this dynamic where you have a drivers and a constructors world championship. And it's very easy to view the constructors world championship as the car is the output. The teams build the car. But in a way, there's such a kind of almost third element to it where you have the car that's built by part of the team. Then you have the race team and the operations team and the strategy team who are, then maximizing that car. And then also you add the drivers on top of that. So there's kind of this extra bit of Formula One that kind of gets lost in the middle of all the people that actually aren't, involved in the kind of historical like design of the car, testing of it back in the factory, kind of putting it together. But the 100 or so people that travel with every race team, they're not designing a new car every weekend, but they're so important. And of course, we've seen the conversation around Ferrari this year. It's so important to make those high pressure decisions at the right time. And with a lot of eyes, it can be very difficult to get it right all the time. But it's just essential that you've got the right people in the right place, and that's exactly the kind of attitude that Red Bull have rode all the way to the double world championships this year.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Ferrari Red Bull having the fastest car. At one stage this year, it was Ferrari. Ferrari had the fastest car at one stage this year, especially in the early parts of the season. And a large part of the reason why they couldn't make it count was reliability issues, obviously strategy calls and stuff like that. It just didn't. They didn't, and obviously driver errors sometimes as well. And you need all three to come together. And for Red Bull, it has this season, and they've continued to evolve the car as well. And I think, look, I think people have given Ferrari sometimes a bit of a hard time, and I think Sainz said it as well, and that everything is bigger with Ferrari, which it is. But I think
Yeah.
when you look at what Red Bull and Mercedes as well, and their strategy calls, Mercedes strategy call in Texas was great. The only thing they didn't have was medium tire, but their call to get Hamilton in before Verstappen was great. That's what you do, and the aggressive and bold nature that they took was amazing. And to see the way they go about their business and the way Red Bull go about their business, it's good to watch because it's like Christian Horner said at the start of the season. I'd rather make a fast car reliable rather than a reliable car fast. And so they've had the fast car and they just put everything else together. They got the reliability right, they got the strategy calls right, they had a great driver, and they just put it all together. And that's what you need to do as a team to get that championship. And yeah, it's when they come out and they post for the pictures, that's when you see how really big these teams are, and they're massive. It's not just the driver you see on track or Christian Horner doing interviews, or once in a while you see AJ Newey when the cameras pan to him. It's so many people
Yeah.
in the background that you don't even know. Like I didn't know who I think John Monahan who was and what his job was with Red Bull, and then and those are the people that you don't necessarily see who are so key to the success of the team. So yeah, I think it takes so much to go into win the championship, which is why I think when they do win it, you see how much it means to the people there because it's taken a lot out of them, basically.
And one of the people that also stands out, you mentioned on that Red Bull pit wall, was GP, Max's race engineer. I mean, he seems like he's so chill, and it's such a contrast. I mean, we also saw it with Mick Schumacher's race engineer. People love that kind of dynamic. You hear them over the radio. It seems like they kind of have this chemistry and a humorous working relationship that kind of benefits both of them.
Yeah.
But with Max, I mean, he's a exuberant chap on the radio sometimes, and it can be. You can imagine that we spoke about the pressure that these people are under when they're leading these Formula One teams and actually doing it, really competing, trying to win these races. It's got to be a kind of interesting element to the job, right? That almost psychological management of a racing driver who is having to do things that you could never expect a normal person to have to do and competing at an extremely high level. But yeah, I don't know. It seems to me like that's a really interesting element of the job. That kind of being that personal right hand man for the races for GP.
It's almost like a therapist in the middle of a race, in a way. Like they're just there to just calm you down. And you saw that with GP on Sunday when Max was like angry. He just like, all right, Max, relax. Still a long way to go, and they just get their heads in the game. And another example I love is Gasly and his engineer. I think that's a good relationship that they have, and you see obviously with Lewis and Bono and they're the popular one and stuff like that. And I think it's like having a best friend there, and they know so much about what their driver is thinking at the time, and the drivers are. I don't like when people have a go at them for what they say over the radio during the races. I think 20 competitive drivers in such a high intensity environment, driving these rocket ships around the track on a hot day, and and the car is basically moving on the left, right, and center. I mean, I ride that the camera, the eye cam, the helmet cam.
Oh, driver's
Basically,
eye, yeah.
I hate it
Driver's
so
eye.
much. I'm there thinking, Jesus Christ, how are you seeing that? Like I hated it in Singapore. I'm thinking you're gonna hit the wall, and they're just so comfortable to go ahead. And I think they have that person on the radio to them who can just calm them down, get them in the right headspace, and knows them best of all. I know when I need to say certain things to Lewis. I know when I need to say certain things to Max. I know what he wants at certain points. I know what he doesn't want. And they all seem to have calming voices. You talk about mix as well.
For sure.
GP has a very calming voice on the radio. Like it's same thing with Bono and even Russell's uh, engineer as well, and I think it's needed in such a high intensity job. Someone who can just calm you down, and it's why Max is always quick to praise GP, and Lewis is always quick to praise Bono because in such high intensity, high pressure moments, there's a calming voice on the other end, and a voice who never get and they never make mistakes really, and which is I think one of the best things about the driver's success is that it's never just them; it's someone on the other end of the radio who's telling them remain calm, keep going.
Yeah, for sure. It was. I mean, Kota was full of highlights, but we got our kind of clip of the season of Lewis. It's hammer time, smashes out an in lap, and yeah, makes that high pressure pit stop to
Yeah,
to eventually get the position that they were aiming for. But that was a pretty cool moment, right?
yeah. I think Bonner knew not when to say. He knew. I'm not saying this until Lewis is in like a position to win a race, and I think
For
him
sure.
saying that to Lewis is almost like a message, like you're in this, like you can win this race, and I think that probably just revved him up a little bit more. It was like, oh, okay, like Max isn't just gonna walk away with this. So, yeah, I think I think everyone it's hammer time. I think everyone loves that. Like that's like music to everyone's ears. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's definitely one of the clips of the season.
All right, so last kind of thing that I want to end on, looking forward to Mexico. If we were going to make a prediction, we spoke a lot about the big three teams. I'd love to know who you think is going to kind of finish best of the rest. So whether maybe it's a Norris, it's a Alonso. How do
Yeah.
you think that kind of middle of the grid is going to shape up? And obviously potentially we can see one of those cars break up into that podium spot. But if we're assuming on reliability, teams being able to manage the overheating issues that we do sometimes see in Mexico, is it Alonso with the form he's in at the moment?
Is this in the championship or is it like just on the
No,
race?
just um, well, just start. I mean, yeah, for Mexico, who's gonna who do you
Yeah,
think will finish best of the rest? And yeah, maybe we can. I'll change my question
I
because
think
that's a better question. Who do you think is going to finish there in the championship?
I just played myself with that one. I think if you look at it, the Alpines tend to go well at every single type of track this year. They can go on the ones with the high downforce and the low downforce. They do better. They do well at all of them, and McLaren tend to suit a certain type of circuit. I think they suit the low downforce ones, if I remember correctly. So I think it's hard to look past Alpine this weekend. I think if they had done everything right in America, they probably finish ahead of McLaren and ahead of Norris. So I think right now the way Alonso is driving, it's hard to look past him finishing the best of the rest. But I think the most underrated driver on the grid is Esteban Ocon, and what he's managed to do this year. Because he said a few weeks ago, I saw the article where he said that no one has done a good job against Fernando since Lewis as he has. And I was telling someone like, no, he might be right. Like he's mashed him for a lot of the season. Of course, Alonso is Alonso, but Ocon's always been there or thereabouts. Like he's not beating him consistently, but he's managed to get his one ups here and there. And obviously, reliability has played a part in it. But there's been times where Ocon has genuinely been ahead of Alonso on pace. And obviously you don't know what's going on with the cars and setups and all that stuff, but Ocon's done really well, and so he's in that shout. But I think this weekend, if I had my money on it, which I don't, and I don't bet, but if I did, um, I think I'd look at Alonso. I think he's just in supreme form at the moment, and yeah, it's just hard to look past him being the best of the rest.
Yeah, I'm trying to run my brain as to who else you could go for. Someone that we haven't mentioned at all, and maybe given the context of how his season's turned out, you can probably understand why. Is Daniel Ricciardo, because he, of anyone on the grid, I think has the largest gap to teammate. Like if you just sort of you analyze everything, put it together,
Yeah,
we're always talking about how Formula One drivers are judged against their teammates. Is that gap between the two McLaren drivers, it seems like a pretty heavy hindrance to this fight to Alpine that they're trying to get themselves into.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's obviously it's never fun to just go out and criticize someone, but it just feels like
especially
it's
someone like
lacking
Daniel.
in what
Yeah,
he's delivering at the moment, and he should be in the conversation when we talk about who could be best of the rest. Daniel Ricciardo's name should come up, and it hasn't yet.
yeah,
I don't know what. I guess he's gone, right. You mentioned Ocon.
yeah.
He's up against Gasly next year. That's also going to be a pretty spicy teammate dynamic.
Mm.
I don't know. First, I suppose, yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on why Ricardo is missing from the conversation we're having about best of the rest, and then also
Yeah,
about Ocon and Gasly too. But we'll start with Ricardo.
yeah. I mean, it's tough to watch. I think everyone's a Daniel Ricciardo fan, and and I've had to go through a lot of his interviews this year and listen to what he says. And each time he remains upbeat, he remains confident in that he can find a way. And I've admired that even in the face of some of the toughest moments this season, he's always believed that he could find a way to get it right and to get it right with McLaren. But in Austin, I think because one, he loves that race so much, he sounded downbeat. And I always said the longest interviews on the grid every single weekend will always be the McLaren drivers. They'll always open and they'll always talk about. They'll always go long. They'll always give you something to write about. Basically, Daniel Ricciardo
For
was the
sure.
shortest I think it'd been all season because I think he was just like he was at the stage where I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, how can I be so far off the pace? And I do feel for him. And it's such a weird thing. And we talk about all different types of sports earlier. Having that, being in the right situation is so key and being in the right situation to let your talent flourish and to be successful is so key. Because if you look at Daniel Ricciardo, a few years ago, you said, who are the best drivers on the grid? You'd go Lewis and Max, probably Seb, and you go, well, who's fourth? Ricciardo.
And unfortunately, with that chat about Daniel Ricciardo, that was the end of me and Nadim's recording session because the software we were using to host our call went down and we couldn't record anything after that. But hopefully in an hour and a half, we got through plenty of different topics and chatted about loads of different things beyond Formula One and different sports and stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm having to make this outro from my bedroom and add it on as a little edit on the end. But I hope you enjoyed the episode very much. We'll be coming back in the future, even more episodes, and definitely having Nadim back on to reflect on the final races of this Formula One season. So hope you enjoyed. As always, please rate and review. Check out the YouTube channel for clips and TikTok as well. Shorter clips on there. Definitely the clip about Will Buxton will be going on the TikTok because people love that sort of drama. But overall, yeah, just thanks for watching the episode. And unfortunately, we didn't get to record a proper outro during the first recording. But I hope this makes up for the difference. And yeah, I'll be back hopefully with some full length episodes that stay connected the whole time. Thanks for watching this episode of the Jack Threlfall Show.